11,
10.
9,
Ignition sequence start.
6, 5,
4.
3, 2, 1.
On July 20th, 1969, American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin became the first men to land and walk on the moon.
Fly me to the moon.
The Apollo 11 moon landing and the exploration of the moon represented an important time in United States history. Not only did the United States win the space race and unite the nation, but the exchange of information and new technology impacts our lives 47 years later. Many people believe America's interest in space exploration started after President Kennedy's 1961 speech, which challenged the nation to send a man to the moon.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
The United States' commitment to space exploration and the exchange of information began in 1955, when President Eisenhower approved a plan to put a satellite in orbit.
Announced that plans are going forward for the launching of small, unmanned, Earth-circling satellites as part of the United States' participation in the International Geophysical Year.
Unfortunately, the Soviet Union launched their own satellite before the planned launch of the United States, and thus, the Russian Sputnik 1 became the world's first artificial satellite. During this time, the United States and the Soviet Union were engaged in the Cold War, which was basically a competition over ideologies. Space exploration emerged as a major race between the two countries. The Sputnik launch was a major blow to America, creating an illusion that the USSR was ahead in technological advances. If Russians could send Sputnik into space, then they could launch a nuclear weapon anywhere in the world. As a direct result, President Eisenhower approved the creation of NASA. NASA began to conduct space missions within months of its creation. Project Mercury helped scientists learn how humans could survive the hardship of spaceflight. Project Gemini helped NASA scientists perfect re-entry and splashdown procedure. Without these two programs, the success of Project Apollo would not have been possible. In 1960, John F. Kennedy was elected president after a campaign that promised superiority over the Soviet Union. During his brief time in office, the United States have already suffered two key Cold War defeats to their rival USSR. First, on April 12th, cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human to reach space. Then, on April 17th, 1961, the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion began. The US covertly tried to assist in the overthrow of the communist Cuban government led by Fidel Castro, which was backed by the Soviet Union. The Cuban revolutionaries were defeated within 3 days. After the defeats, President Kennedy had to prove to the world that America was superior in international leadership and technological advances. He met with his advisors and was assured that the goal to get a man on the moon first could be accomplished. After President Kennedy's speech, the exploration of space became a priority, and the nation got busy achieving the goal of sending a man to the moon. The three astronauts chosen for Apollo 11 were highly trained military pilots and accomplished engineers. They had the skills necessary to make President Kennedy's challenge a reality. To prepare the astronauts for the moon landing, NASA scientists transformed the northern Arizona landscape into a recreation of the moon. They blasted hundreds of different sized craters into the Earth to form the Cinder Lake crater field, creating an ideal training ground for the astronauts. Apollo astronauts practiced every second of their mission, even planting the flag. They were prepared for every contingency.
Astronaut basic training is survival training. In the days of Gemini, you never knew for sure where a spacecraft might land if there was an emergency deorbit. So we had to take desert training, water training, and jungle survival training.
Armstrong and Aldrin's skill of being pilots came in handy when they realized they had overshot the intended landing spot by a mile and were heading for an area with boulders. In maneuvering to avoid hitting the rocks, they came within the minute of running out of fuel and having to abort the mission. During the moon exploration, the astronauts took soil samples, photos of the terrain, planted a US flag, ran a few simple scientific tests, and spoke with President Richard Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here representing not only the United States, but men of peace of all nations, and with interest and a curiosity and with a vision for the future.
Before they left, they planted the plaque that read,
Dear men from the planet Earth, first set foot upon the moon.
Armstrong and Aldrin rendezvoused with their colleague Michael Collins in lunar orbit for a safe voyage back to Earth. During the mid to late 1960s, when Apollo was being designed and built, there were significant technological advancements. Thanks to the exchange of information, much of the developments by NASA can be seen in the technology we use today.
We have GPS systems. They're all things that we use every day because we're utilizing this advanced technology from the space program. We have also a deeper understanding of the world beyond our own.
Some of the technology developed specifically for the Apollo moon exploration mission impacted our world. For example, race car drivers and firefighters use liquid-cooled garments based on the devices created for the Apollo astronauts to wear under their spacesuits. The process of freeze-drying foods was developed to feed the Apollo astronauts in space. They are still used in military field rations as part of survival gear. The most important development was the microchip, or the integrated circuit designed to manage a complex series of systems on board the capsules. This miniaturized electronic circuit did away with the manual assembly of separate transistors and capacitors. This exchange of information revolutionized electronics and took the high-tech industry to a place of mass production.
30 seconds.
As the world watched Apollo 11 touch down on the moon, no one had any idea how this would impact our future. Watching the landing and exploration of the moon gave us pride in our nation. In my opinion, the most important impact that Apollo 11 had on the world was that humankind could journey from Earth and land on another heavenly body and return safely to Earth. As Neil said,
That's one small step for man, one giant leap